Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Pauline, and today, to start off this episode, I wanted to discuss whether or not basketball players, NBA players, their coaches, the players, whatever, the staff, everyone involved, whether or not ball players need to be rested, need to sit out just to rest. Now, this has been something that we've discussed and we've talked about in previous episodes before, but basically, do players really need to be sitting out, like even now, this early in the season, to rest for, it may be bigger games or just so that they're not running down their bodies by the time postseason comes around? Now, my personal opinion is, I have two personal opinions when it comes to this. So one, of course, my personal opinion, and it's up to the coach. Okay. It really is. And it's up to, the fact whether or not, if you are a key player and you're sitting out, can your replacement, can the rest of your team, can the guy that plays in for you, that subs in for you, carry that weight? So it's as if you're not even missing. Now, that's the only way that if I were a coach, would I be okay with that? Because I don't want to sacrifice losing a game just so a player who's healthy can rest. Now, if you are injured and things like that, that's a totally different thing. But I mean about just sitting. And now LeBron has been known to do this. He is a lover of having a rest period, especially before the postseason begins, so that he can rest. We've already discussed in a previous episode the fact that him and Coach Lou are discussing him not playing as many minutes throughout the regular season so that he does rest more. And that no matter what, the game, what's happening with the game is, of course, that they want to win, but want to preserve him and preserve the team in general, the players over there with the Cavaliers, and just making sure that everybody is feeling well rested for each game in and game out, and that they don't have to play the full time of each game, the maximum that, is deemed, whatever the maximum is deemed, with the least amount of breaks during the preseason. Now, I don't think it's a bad idea, a good idea. Like I said, I honestly think that it really has to depend on whether or not you are going to be that big of a missing factor that every time we sit you down and that you decide to just sit out a whole game that we know we're going to lose. I'm not okay with that because I like to win. But then the flip side of that is that I really think that you should be conditioning your body, and you should be, as an athlete, as a professional athlete, each season, each game, each week. Now, I understand that they do go on like road trips where they will play certain amount of games in so many days, and they're on the road and things like that, or even at home having a series of games at home every single night. I get that part, but you should also be using the time when you're not playing to rest and to taking into consideration what you're eating, what you're doing in your off time in between practices before games to prepare, because you know that this is what's coming. And it's not like the season, the schedule for the season is not out. Like, you know what to expect. You know what's happening. You're getting paid. And that's kind of like what the head coach over in Detroit with the Pistons, Stan Van Gundy, that's what he was saying. You're getting paid to play 82 games. And as long as you are rested, then, as long as you're healthy, you will be playing. Like, expect to play. And so, and he was saying, and I quote, but we can actually rest guys other ways. Like tomorrow, and this was in regards to what he was talking about, like tomorrow, it will be a day off for us. That's a day of rest. And I think it can actually provide more rest for them than playing for a few 4 fewer minutes tonight or something like that. And that's kind of like a piece that he had when he was getting asked about this topic. Now, and I agree. I don't know what's playing. Now, there is a difference depending on how the game, the tempo of the game, and the physicality of the game, and how, what game number this is in the series. Have they been traveling all night? Have they, were they on a bus, on a plane, just traveling so far, whatever may have you, for a long period of time? I know that can affect, and then like the time differences and things like that. But at the same time, and I know it's physical, I know, but at the same time, is there resting in basketball is my question. Is it okay for a player, not a LeBron, because, LeBron kind of does his own thing. He's always going to do his own thing. He's always has done his own thing. That's different. So unless you are the king, is it just to have your rest days to say, oh, I'm not going to play for 2 or 3 more games because I'm preparing for when we play against the Cavaliers next week? I don't know. I kind of don't like it. It makes sense. But then I guess this brings us back to that old question, that old notion on whether or not the NBA season should be shortened and if there should be fewer games so that they have more time. I mean, they have less pounding and things like that, and that they have more of an off season is what I was saying, more time to rest, more of an off season. So that's what I'm wondering, and that's what I'm asking. So you can always tweet at me at GSMC_basketball, because I want to hear your guys' take. Should players who are healthy be expected to be ready to play every single game, day in and day out, no matter how long of a road trip it is? Or should they have the option to take a rest? Should they have the option to say, I'm going to sit out the next 2, 3, 4 games? Or it doesn't matter. And that's what I'm wondering too, because I think sitting out 2 or 3, 4 games and resting and rehabbing your body and things like that makes more of a difference than just saying, oh, tonight, instead of playing 30 minutes, you're going to play 26, or you're going to play 23. Does it really make that big of a difference, especially if it's a guy that you're trusting to give his all in every single minute that he's on the court, whether it's 6 minutes, 10 minutes, 42 minutes, whatever, what I'm saying? Is it, what's the point of that? Him resting a little bit longer. So does that mean that we're going to sit him out the whole fourth quarter? Are we sitting him out the first quarter, the first half, second half? I don't know. And again, if I was your coach, I would say, I don't want it to be so obvious that you're sitting out that we start losing, especially if you're one of my key players. I'm going to throw you back in. But then we have the flip side of these guys getting hurt, because we have guys like Jeremy Lin. He's out for 2 weeks due to a hamstring. We have all these other players throughout the season, even, yes, this early in the season, getting hurt to where they're going to have to sit out for a few weeks. And I know 2 weeks is very, very short in the scheme of things. But, guys are getting injured right away, even though it's the start of the season. So should we be resting them? Should there be greater rest in between? Should perhaps, I don't know, should we have the regular season end and then there be more of a break in between the ending of regular season and the start of postseason to give them that time to rest, rehab, and get back in it? Let nurse some injuries that have been lingering all season, nurse some aching feet, getting some more rest as far as just sleep in general. Now, rest can be anything. Rest could just be just watching TV, but actually sleeping and things like that. I don't know. I think that kind of makes a little bit more sense, is actually extending that break in between the regular season and the start of the postseason. That might do a little bit better, but I don't know, because you can definitely get hurt as early as the first game. You can get hurt as late as the postseason itself and be out the rest of the postseason. And you could have rested all the last 5 games of regular season preparing for postseason, and you get hurt the first game of playoffs. I don't know. I don't know if it's your favorite player or a player that you've come to watch and support, and then you find out that he's sitting this one out. I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like it. I'm just too much, especially if you're healthy. But again, this is taking us back to the fact that perhaps this season is too long. Perhaps it's just too much on these guys' bodies. And should we reduce some of that strain and stress that we're putting on them and things? These are just some things to consider. So we are going to take it to a quick break. But when we come back, like I said, let me know your guys' opinion. Is it worth it? And if this is a new trend, this is my other piece on this. If this is a new trend where we're saying, and people are discussing, and different analysts are saying that coaches are pushing their players too hard and having them play back to back to back, not giving them any rest, or, actually praising this new trend of sitting out players and having them wait a few out in preparation for another game or in preparation for the postseason. Like, for instance, the Grizzlies set out Conley and Gasol against Minnesota and things like that. And the Rockets, they set out Hilario so that he can rest, and like literally saying just putting rest down for the reason. And it could be rest just because, their knees are sore. It could be rest because they literally just need to rest. It could be whatever. It's not a serious injury or even a minor injury such as a hamstring strain like Jeremy Lin, where he needs to be out for 2 weeks to nurse that injury. It's just for rest, literally citing rest as the reason. And if we're saying that this is a good idea and this is a good thing and that coaches should do this more often for their players, then really maybe the NBA season should be shortened. Maybe we should cut it. Because if everybody's thinking that we need more breaks in between games and they need to sit out games because it's too much back to back and too much pounding and too many games, then we cut back the games. But is that what we really want to do? Are we okay with saying that we're going to reduce the amount of games? Is everybody okay with that? Are players... I think players would be okay with that, shortening the season. And we know that a lot of players would be okay with shortening the season. Or even, like I said, having more of a break time in between the end of the regular, start of the post. Something, I don't know. So we'll see how this this new trend, if anything, changes in these next few seasons to come. If there is going to be a cutback on games. We already know that the players and the coaching staffs hate traveling overseas for the games. Doc Rivers even said himself that he doesn't really like it because, all the jet lag, but that, it's better than having to play overseas often, and that he would rather take that time to allow his players to rest than all of that flight time and then getting over the jet lag there. And when you come back, getting acclimated and things like that, and playing overseas. Remember, we had the Chinese games and things of that nature. So I don't know. I think perhaps having more of a rest in between the two seasons, post and regular season, or just simply reducing the games. And I guess you could do both. You could reduce some of the regular season games to give us a longer break in between the start of the postseason. I mean, I guess it's really up to the NBA, and of course people don't want to shorten the schedule because we love it. We love as much basketball as we possibly can, but clearly it's not working as far as with our favorite athletes and their bodies. So I'm going to cut it to a quick break. Keep it locked here. You are listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Pauline, and I will be right back.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Pauline, and I wanted to kind of discuss what's been happening as far as some people who or some teams like the Mavericks can't buy a win right now. The Pelicans can't buy a win right now. And it's just one of those things where the start of this season doesn't necessarily, it can put a damper on what's happening or what, how people feel for the rest of the season, but it doesn't mean anything. You do want to start racking up some wins and get off on a good foot, of course, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way. And poor Anthony Davis and the Pelicans, he's literally giving it his all every single night and putting it all out on the court every night, but has yet to really, and rightfully so, he's saying it's very frustrating because what else can you do? You're trying to put the team on your back, but it's literally you versus the world right now. And that's really difficult and can be, that's when players start to get annoyed. That's when players start to get upset. That's when they just get kind of restless as well. And that's something that you always got to be careful of. And then you have the Dallas Mavericks, who are already 0-4 as of this Wednesday. So as of last night, already 0-4. And it's kind of, it's a rocky start for some teams now. I know that not every team is going to be 4-0 and that teams are not always going to win, 2-2, 3-1, whatever. But 0-4 is tough because now and especially for this team, like with the Mavericks, because I know that they're face off against the Jazz, who, Dirk was already saying that he understands that they are, and I quote him, going to be a team to be reckoned with. And that's just something that you have to know. And everybody, and again, it can be one of those things where it just so happens that everybody on, Dirk and the Mavs are coming in with an 0-4 record, but then they crush the Jazz. It's possible, you never want to doubt the underdog. You never want to doubt the underdog when it comes to sports. But then it takes me back to the whole, that whole spiel that I gave at the beginning of the episode. The whole, do players need more rest? Is it just because they're tired? Is the team not meshing? But then are the Jazz going to have an off game because some of their guys are tired? I don't know. So, but anyways, that was kind of like a bad link up, but that's what I was just saying. It's been on my mind is how, the players that are on all these teams, because like I said, with Anthony Davis, he's literally giving it his all. When is he gonna, I'm sure that's where some people who are in favor of players resting, they're already 0-4. You have your biggest man, your greatest man, your forerunner, Ant Davis, giving it his all every single night. You risk tiring him out. You risk him just literally putting it out on the floor so much and giving it his all that he's going to need a rest. And so I don't know, I wouldn't be surprised if soon, especially a guy like him who is prone, I'm sorry to say it, but he's prone to injury, how that's going to be. So we'll keep an eye out on that. But then in other news, I wanted to discuss also another injury. An injury update with Timothy Mozgov of the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, if you remember, just most recently, they were up against the Indiana Pacers, and then they did have a game against the Atlanta Hawks. But in Tuesday's game, that game against the Pacers, he did get hurt, and so he did have to. He got hurt in that game, and they were wondering if he had a concussion, and he was having or whether or not he had fractured his face. Luckily enough for them, because he did sit out against the Atlanta Hawks, luckily enough for him, he did have to have stitches after, getting elbowed literally in the face. And he did have a CT scan as well. And so it's been deemed that he did not suffer from a concussion. That's great. He did, like I said, have to get stitches, and it's pretty cut up on his face and things like that. But It's fine. I'm sure there's a lot of swelling. Luke Walton, his coach, says it looks like he's been in a heavyweight fight. And so we're just going to have to wait for him to make a comeback and to come back in there and give it his all after suffering that injury. And it happens sometimes. And that's where the difference is for me. Like, you got to sit out if you're hurt, and they're going to be monitoring him and monitoring his face, especially in his head area, because of course that's a very delicate thing. But I mean, so Mozgov, he's a starting center for the Lakers, so he has to sit out. But I don't know. I just don't like this whole idea of people sitting out just because they feel like it. That's just my thing. Anyway, so in different news in basketball, to keep it up. So I wanted to discuss also some college basketball news, because I feel like I need to get on this, and I haven't been talking about it too much, and I'm very excited. I know that they are starting off their season as well, and I'm very excited for the college basketball season. And I wanted to discuss Paschal of the Syracuse. So he has, and his last name is Chukwu, and he's a big guy there, and he's gone over, and he is needing to really what my thing with him is that I'm very excited for him because he's a tall guy. I believe he's like 7'2". So he's another big guy, because I'm a fan of the big guys and the fan of the versatile big guy, and watching how these players are now starting to change the game for big men. And we had a whole episode spiel on that, so you guys can definitely take a listen to that at a later time. But and molding these big guys to be more than just trash picker-uppers, more than just being a rock in the inside, which we need, and which as a big guy, especially if you're over like 6'11", if you're a true center and you're like 7'2", 7'3", 7'4", 7'6", even, you have to be able to take up a lot of space. You naturally take up a lot of space in the key, but you have to take up a big presence of the key, and you have to own the key. You have to demand inside, especially on defense, and making guys second guess coming at you on the inside. You have to be a wall in there, but then also being versatile and being really a part of the action on the flip side, on the offensive end, and making sure that you're doing more than just standing there and waiting for a pass. Like I said before in a previous episode, how Anthony Davis, he's scoring all these points because he's being versatile. Before, it was such a big deal when you would have a big guy shoot a three. We'd all kind of like, oh, wait for it until it either goes in air balls or bricks or whatever happens. Before, it would be like this huge big deal that a center was, at the top of the key, popping out to a 3-point line and tossing up shooting a three. Now it's kind of commonplace. It's not uncommon. Draymond Green shooting threes. Joakim Noah, he trying it. Okay. He's, Boogie, DeMarcus Cousins shooting threes and feeling comfortable shooting the threes. So I'm excited for Paschal. Like I said, with the Syracuse, he is a work in progress, and they have acknowledged that, because he's rough right now. That's the best way for me to describe him. He's really rough on the edges. He has a general idea, but in the game, that game time mode is different than when you're in practice, or different when you're scrimmaging, but actually playing like fast-paced games, getting back and forth, and still being a presence, and still making really wise decisions, and not just getting all flared around because it's a faster-paced game. So I am very much looking forward to how he is going to be doing with the Syracuse Orange, and because this is a player that I don't know if you know this or not, but he didn't even know about the zone. Okay, so he transferred from Providence, and he transferred to the Syracuse, and like I said, he is 7'2". He's a center for them, and he just had his first game after transferring about 19 months ago, so he hasn't really played. And of course, he's rusty. His coach was saying, you're looking a little bit rusty, and he didn't produce as much as I think a lot of people were really hoping for. A lot of people were hoping for him to really have a breakout game for his first game with the Orange, but honestly, it's not something that you can't really predict that. And I always think that it's really good to just shake off the dust and to at least get on the score charts, at least get on the playbook, the stat book, so that you can say you did something, but you can't really expect, very rarely are you going to come out and be top scorer, top rebounder, and things like that. So he did play 21 minutes off the bench. He scored 4 points. He was 2 for 4. He had 5 rebounds, blocked 2 shots, even stole the ball twice. So it's not like he was in just one place. He was trying to do a lot and did a little bit of everything. But like I said, for a guy who is not really used to the zone, there's a lot that he has to learn. And there's a lot that he, in that tempo and getting and moving, and a lot more movement, and actually having to work is something that it's going to take time. And that's why we have this preseason. That's why we have these early games. So by the time it gets to when it matters, he's good and ready to go. And the really nice thing about Paschal is the fact that he knows it, and so he's working hard and he wants to. And so this is a guy that I'm really excited to see what he can do, like I said, and how big of a factor he's going to be for the Syracuse Orange, because his presence alone already makes him somebody to reckon with in the inside. But once he actually gets some really good, like he gets in his flow and he gets comfortable, because right now he's not comfortable, and that's the problem. He's not comfortable. He's thinking too hard. He's thinking about his next move. He's thinking about, what am I supposed to do? What is coach saying? What does he want me to do? Instead of doing, when it's second nature, and just not having to worry. And that's when, once he gets comfortable, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch him. So that's one guy that I want you guys to keep a lookout for. But that's actually going to do it for this episode of the podcast. This was kind of like a weird episode because I had a little bit of a longer segment this time. So I want to let you guys know that you can find this episode as well as future and previous episodes on our network website, and a ton of other podcasts. There's science fiction, there's entertainment, there's other sports. We have football, fantasy football, as well as MMA. We have weird news if you're into something to make you laugh a little bit. We have a lot of different things, health and wellness. There's something out there for everyone. Book review. We also have a Bible study podcast. Whatever you are into, you can find it on our network website. That's gsmcpodcast.com, as well as find all of those shows, all of those podcasts, and all of the episodes that they have ever had in the past, present, and future on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. You can find me on Facebook. You can also find me on Twitter at GSMC_basketball. I would love to hear what you guys have to say, and I will talk to you guys next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.